Welcome and thanks for joining us as we continue to talk about this topic, don't waste your work. We're very excited about having with us Ugo and Faith, one of our amazing couples at City Life Church. And we want to talk a little bit about your work. So Ugo, tell us a little bit about what you do for a living.
So I'm a surgeon. I specialize in orthopedics, and within orthopedics, I actually am a subspecialist in hip and knee replacement surgery. So that kind of runs the gamut from patients that have hip fractures to arthritis, and I do all the sort of complex surgeries and things like that. So that's kind of my
So
deal.
I got a bad knee, so I need to come to
you should take care of that knee for the next couple of years.
Yeah. I'm kind of young. So Faith, tell us a little bit about what you do for a living.
Yeah, so I'm a pediatric gastroenterologist. So I treat children who have problems with their stomach, guts, livers, pancreas, all those organs. My day-to-day is a little bit unique because I do a lot of research. So right now my time is spent, 80% of my time is spent doing research and 20% is spent seeing patients.
Why do you think there seems to be such a divide and a dichotomy between our work and our worship, and people that maybe feel like my work is the work I do, is just what I do, making money, I'm doing my paycheck, and the whole point of this is like, don't waste it, because God wants to use that and use every part of you. But why do you think there is that division, or do you see that in your field?
I sort of think it's sort of just like anything else that are challenges in our lives. It's a lot easier to compartmentalize things. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to just kind of put things in a box. So this is my work life. Yeah. This is my social life. This is my spiritual life, and they're all completely separate. And it's easier to do that, because if you're ashamed of one part of your life, you can kind of keep that separate from everything else. Yeah, it's significantly more challenging to mention even the thought of praying with a patient. Mm-hmm. That's something that I still struggle with. Mm-hmm. I've have recently started to try to incorporate that into my practice, and it's something that I struggle with every single time I even think about bringing it up. But I think it's definitely easier to separate the two, and it's something that we constantly talk about and try to figure out how we can kind of sort of overcome those barriers to realizing that our jobs, we're physicians, but whatever our jobs are, it's related to our spirituality. It's related to how we lead our family lives. It's all one, and how best we can incorporate those things together is going to just make us whole, I think.
And I think that when I look at my life, and starting from high school, truly, I could give so many examples of doors that were opened that yes, I'm a smart person and I work hard, but there are doors that have been opened that were not because I'm a smart person and I worked hard. They were clearly opened by God, and there have been doors that have been closed similarly. And so I think that we live in this very politically correct world where you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, in public, and that's and that's just sort of, you don't do that at a dinner or at work or in any of these public spheres. But I think that when I look at where I am today, at any moment, I very much feel that I've been placed there for a reason. And so like you said, it's not easy, but trying to just be aware of that and just asking God to show us how to be his hands and feet, because I feel like he has me in the lab that day for a reason, and he's going to show my research is going to go a certain direction because that's where he wants it to go, for this ultimate goal that maybe I don't understand. And similarly with patient care and even our interactions with our coworkers. And it's much easier, like he said, to be politically correct about it and not to say things when you feel like kind of that thing inside of you saying well, maybe you should ask them if they go to church. Maybe you should, or this is not right. Maybe you should say something. It's much easier to just kind of push that down
self-preservation.
Absolutely. Because you don't want to be the one that is
a whistleblower
is being politically incorrect at work. But and it's a struggle. It's not easy, I don't think, for anybody. And thankfully I have you go to talk to about it when we do struggle, but I think it's a lot of it is just being politically correct, and this pressure to be politically correct in this world, and not to ignite fires where they don't already exist or whatever, and pleasing other people, and then lack of boldness, and it's hard to be bold. It's much harder to be bold than to not, and so I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Are there any specific scriptures or even just looking at Jesus and who he was and what he came to do that have inspired you or helped you to bring faith into the workplace? I mean, obviously through prayer and those kind of things, but anything else characteristic wise? I'm kind of throwing that on the spot here. But.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pursuit of truth, especially for what we do, is just critical.
Yeah.
And that's completely a Jesus thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's removing the comforts. It's throwing over tables in the temple, right? It's all these things that there's a lot of dogma that especially in what we do, there's a lot of dogma that things are done this way, you should always do it this way.
Right.
And there's no sort of asking questions and trying to figure out, well, what's the actual truth, right? So let's get through all the other motivations or whatever that might be contaminating what the truth is, and let's seek out the truth. And I think that's something that as Christians that we have access to, because this is the life that Jesus lived, right? This is what God has intended us for us to be, as to people that seek out truth. And especially for what we do when we're dealing with people's lives, and we've got different options in terms of treatments for patients. We don't know the answers.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of times.
Sometimes you know too much.
We have a lot of data, a lot of studies and a lot of things that might give us hints as to what might be beneficial for a patient or something like that. But we always have to keep asking those questions and continue to be strong in what we're looking for those answers. So.
And I think you and I were talking about this actually, and this point I'm about to make is one that I don't know, maybe it's not so obvious, but to me it plays a big role. So to me, the compassion and love that you have for others, and so we were talking about this, and what I mean by that is, if you look at physicians these days, a lot of people are very jaded, whether it be from like kind of the bureaucracy, red tape, insurance, like companies and all the nonsense that we have to deal with just to do our job, whether it be from frustrating patients, like when you're giving your everything and then a patient's completely unappreciative, and like it can really break you down. You're busy, you're exhausted, and a lot of people are really kind of unhappy, and then that can be reflected in the way they treat patients.
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of that you see these days, and Hugo always jokes with me because I end up, my patient docket is full of very, very like needy and time intensive patients, and he's like, you're too nice. You're going to end up with all these like, patients that are just going to suck up all your time. But part of it I think is, and it's not, and it's not that atheists aren't nice, right? Like there's plenty of wonderfully nice and compassionate, empathetic people who are not Christians.
Absolutely.
But I think that in times where, and like I'm known for this in my section, in times when there are very difficult families or families that are considered difficult, I tend to deal with them well. And I think that the reason is because I try to see things from their perspective and love them despite the fact that they may not be showing love to us as their
lovable.
caregivers. Right, they're not lovable. And I think that, and like Hugo's like, we were talking about this yesterday, and he was like, but can you really say, there's lots of non-Christians who can do that? And I was like, yeah, but I think that it comes easier for me than for some others because I have that. Like, I'm supposed to be like Jesus, and Jesus loved the unlovable. And I think that that allows me to do my job without being knocked down as easily, if that makes sense. And so in times when things are really difficult and families are, and for me it's families, because and I see it as this person, it's not an attack on me, it's the fact that they feel helpless and their child is particularly ill and there's a lot of stress going on, and I'm able to, I think, see that and still try to love them, or at least act like I'm, what I mean, like, and I'm able to sort of do that in a way that I think a lot of my colleagues can struggle with sometimes. And I fully attribute that to like Jesus in me. Like that's not something that
there's a humility in that.
Yeah,
right? So,
there's a humility.
So if you're a non-believer but someone that is a nice person, that's fairly fragile, right? Because your beliefs and your the things that you hold important are kind of based on your own abilities, and we all know that as humans that we're fallible. We're just not. We just don't have the capability of sustaining that. So it's just a non-sustainable way of life. So Whereas, for us as believers, as Christians, we know that we don't have that capability of loving the unlovable, right? It's a deeper power. It's a higher power,
right?
That's within us. So it's I think that's sort of a more sustainable way to approach the topic. And as Christians, I take solace in that. It's not. I don't have to have the strength. It's not me, right?
Yeah.
So it just takes the stress level.
Would you say it's almost like we get to recycle love?
Yeah.
Right? Because we get it from him.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And it's not even just because we go, well, yeah, we should do this, and we should be loving, and I should win that person over because they might not pay, and it really benefits me in the end. That's why I'm nice. But ultimately, I'm loving you because I realized how much I'm loved.
Exactly.
Yep.
Even in my worst.
Exactly.
Christ died for me, yeah. And so it's a powerful tool
Yeah.
that we can use the gospel in all of our work. That's awesome. So, real quick, again, the concept of don't waste your work. Before you became a physician, or maybe you did the school, everything, and you're a surgeon, you're in your wheelhouse, you're excited about what you're doing. Not that, I mean, there's maybe other areas you want to go in your career, but while you're struggling to get to that point, what about your relationship with the Lord and your worship, how did that help encourage you when you're not at the perfect place in your career? Does that make sense? Any thoughts about that?
I don't think I'm in the perfect place in my career right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think there is ever going to be a perfect place, and
Or at least what you're going to school
well,
for.
that's what I was going to say. But
yeah.
I think that understanding, I think it kind of goes back to that quest for truth, right? So, and humility in how we think of ourselves, right? As a physician, you're always a student. That you're always learning. You're always a student.
Yeah.
So the type of student that I was, 10 years ago when I started out medical school is somewhat different to the student that I am today, but I'm still a student.
Yeah.
So that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So that's just effort and lack of complacency and the things that kind of we just talked about in terms of the quest for truth, the quest of honesty, and trying to be the best that we can so that we can be the light that God wants us to be in our everyday practice.
So you'd say none of that work was wasted
Yeah.
to get you to this place.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like even still, like he said, in our careers, and part of it's that I'm in academic medicine and he's just starting practice, but and we're at the beginning. We're young in the scheme of things for physicians, not for much else in life, but for physicians we're young. And so we're still going, right? Like we're not. Absolutely. And so I think that for me personally, it is just seeking God's direction in everything in work. I'm in a place right now in my work where I'm like trying to seek direction for what's my next step in my research, what's my next step in my career, which direction do I go, how do I make this, and I am fully turning to God on that because like I mentioned before, He's so clearly and like without question opened doors and closed doors, and so I know that He has guided me through this maze of life to get me where I am today for a reason, and trying not to trust or rely on my own thoughts of where my career should be or would be, but instead kind of going with the flow of what Christ's ultimate goal for me is. And I don't know what that is. I have ideas, but I don't, we don't know for real. And for me, what that has looked like on a practical level, even in like med school, for example, when everyone is, your head is in the books constantly and studying nonstop and you have all these exams. And I remember with church, people will be like, oh my God, I can't go to church because I have to study, and I'm thankful that I managed to kind of keep this perspective, but I always said, God will never punish me for taking 2 hours to go to church, right? And so, like, I made that even throughout medical school, throughout residency, like, even if we were post-call, so that just means like we just stayed up for 24, 36 hours. If church was that next morning, we went to church because that we needed that community, we needed that, we needed the whole, we needed to keep Christ in the center and as a priority so that He could guide our steps outside of Sunday morning or Wednesday night or Friday night in New York or, whatever. Like, it was
And that wasn't easy. That I'll tell
It's
you.
not easy.
So
Yeah.
when I was studying for my step 1, which is our boards, that's something you take during your second or third year of medical school. Part of me wanted to skip church on those Sundays,
Yeah.
and I had someone in my ear the whole time
Yeah.
saying, "No, this is a priority.
Right.
Be intentional about it. This is something that, like you said, God is not going to punish you." For doing that, right? So because God has guided you this far, it's important to maintain that part of your life for your sanity, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Well, it's similar to not skipping a workout in a way. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
I actually got more energy
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
by working out,
Exactly.
as opposed to thinking it's going to deplete me
Yeah.
more, and
Exactly.
make me more exhausted.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that about you too. That's awesome. not that you can't miss church. Like, it's not legalistic. We get that. But at the same time, being a holistic person, it's really powerful.
Yeah. And it's important.
Any final thoughts? I'll start with you, Faith. Any final thoughts that you have concerning this concept of encouraging people not to waste their work and thinking holistically about their work and their worship?
I would say just for people in medicine, I think that what has been really helpful to us is in our jobs is truly finding community within the church or within the church as a whole, not just City Life Church. You know what I mean? And finding that, like, Hugo has a men's Bible study at his hospital that he tries to go to, and we've like tried to find ways to have like dinner with other like-minded Christians who are kind of going through it together, so that we can help encourage each other. Because I really find, similar to like, you can't be just a Sunday morning Christian, you can't be just a I watch Sunday TV Christian without the community. And I think that holds true for jobs as well, and careers as well, to help you maintain being intentional about keeping your focus on Jesus even while at work, and keeping your, like, trying to maintain that, like, taking worship into work. And I think that having that accountability of others who are going through similar circumstances at work or in the same field as you has been really beneficial to us. And there have been times in our career where we've been very intentional about that and been great about it. And there's times where like a year passes and we're like, oh shoot, what happened to that? Like we haven't had dinner with them in forever, and so, but we feel the difference. And I think that it's really important to kind of have that community to help build you up and help you maintain that intentionality about bringing Jesus with you to work as well, and making sure that you're not wasting your work and that you're being Christ because you don't have to be a missionary or a pastor to be Christ to others. And I think that being, allowing yourself to do that or being intentional about that is critical, and having others to help support you through that.
Yeah, if you came to me and was like, I'm dealing with this at work, how do I bring Christ? I'd be like, I could give you some ideas.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor, but the best is other people that empathize. And how do you do that? How can we do that?
And
'Cause
talking
they can-
through it. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely. And then holding you accountable. Like he was saying, like with the whole prayer thing, I think there was a member of our church who we were recently talking to about praying with patients, and he goes like, I need to do better about that. And then he came home, like, he's like, I prayed with the patient today, and it's great. It's just nice to have that accountability. Like, that's something that you feel like you should be doing, like do it, and then come back and tell me about it, or I'm going to ask you about it next time I see you. And it's just nice to, I think it's so important to have that.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
For sure.
It's like we talked about before, it's easier to compartmentalize our worlds, and it's just easier to do those things. But I would challenge people to take the narrow path, right? That narrow path will definitely lead to more wholeness and completeness in how we live our lives. And there are Christians in many walks of life, right? So what we do, it's pretty easy to sit here and have a discussion about helping people in our jobs and being Christian. That's very easy for us to kind of conceptualize. But you might not be in a career or field or a job that you're directly helping people, but maybe you're there to witness to an employee or to witness to an industry or whatever it might be. Just don't compartmentalize, right? Just take that narrow path. Take the hard approach, because I think that's what leads to wholeness in and truth and the life that God wants us to live. It's easier said than done, but the commands are right there, and it's a very simple, right? I mean, we think about things. You can break down complex problems into simple, solutions in terms of take pathway A, pathway B, right?
Right.
Pathway A might be the wide lane, wide approach, and a lot easier, but pathway B is a narrow one, and that leads to honesty and truth in who you are as a person. And you might need to rely on family or friends or people that can keep you accountable, but take that narrow approach, challenge yourself, and you're going to be a better person for it.
That's great. Yeah, it's like Christianity is a religion that believes that God left the spiritual realm to come to the physical realm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The same way he's bridged the two. We should do the same
absolutely
in our life. Thanks for joining us as we've interviewed Hugo and Faith on the series Don't Waste Your Work. We're so excited for you to have your work and your worship together as you worship God this week.